At exactly 11:52 p.m. on April 3, 1995, two events occur hundreds of miles apart in two completely different locations in India. On a highway near Durgapur, a tech founder named Shekhar is driving home. He's 29, thinking about a deal he just closed in Delhi. Without warning, a force that doesn't appear on any police report or insurance form shoves his car off the road and puts him into a 30-year coma. At that precise minute, in the northeastern hills, a researcher named Eleanor stands at the edge of an abandoned orchard. She speaks a name she's been carrying in her chest for 5 years, a confession of guilt that finally starves the soil of the weight it had been holding. As the ground beneath Eleanor finally lets go, that release of energy travels the way things with no physical form travel, instantly. It crosses the distance of several states in a heartbeat, arriving on the highway at the exact moment Shekhar's car leaves the asphalt. To understand why a British family's grief hijacked the life of a technology pioneer, we have to look at what happens to trauma when it has nowhere to go. The origin point is 1940. A British physician named Edmund Hargrove arrives in the Northeast, treating villages that the administrative class usually ignores. The locals call him the quiet one who listens. In 1945, when a military patrol arrives looking for him, his wife Catherine makes a choice. To protect the village, she tells them where he is. Edmund goes to warn the people, puts himself directly between them and the soldiers, and dies at 37. Catherine stays on the land. Every morning for 15 years, she whispers her guilt to a newly planted orchard. The trees grow unusually fast, feeding on her shame and the unfinished ground of a burial site beneath the slope, turning the hillside into a battery of stored energy. By 1964, the orchard is so dense the birds won't land in the branches. Catherine leaves, but the ground remains under tension, waiting for a future generation to name what it's holding. While the orchard sat silent, Shekhar's partners in 1990s Kolkata navigated a different kind of pressure. They were trying to build NovaBridge, a software firm, in an economy that was just beginning to open to the world. Shekhar's wife, Sita, began a 30-year study in the arithmetic of devotion. She attended 73 consecutive company meetings, taking meticulous notes in her careful handwriting so that if Shekhar ever woke up, he would know exactly what had happened in his absence. The company survived the initial crash, but it couldn't survive 2001. When global markets contracted following the attacks in New York, foreign investment pulled out of emerging portfolios. NovaBridge was forced to close. The business ended, but the schedule didn't. Shekhar's brother Kiran took over the visits, logging over 300 consecutive Thursdays at the care facility. He sat by the bed and read the news, keeping the seat warm for a man who hadn't moved in decades. Shekhar's life was derailed by a force he couldn't see, but those 73 notebooks and 300 Thursdays meant that even after 30 years, his place in the world was still there. While the founders moved on to separate lives, their children, Ram and Lakshmi, were growing up in the margins of the tragedy. They were born into a story that was already paused, inheritors of a connection they didn't yet understand. In the early 2000s, they reconnected through digital social networks their parents were helping to build. On platforms like Orkut, the two families began to mesh again through the kids. Late-night gaming sessions created a new kind of bond. Ram and Lakshmi spent years communicating through headsets, learning to coordinate and trust each other across thousands of miles of fiber optic cable. They were building the exact interpersonal architecture they would need later. Without realizing it, the children were preparing the foundation for the moment the original story decided to resume. After exactly 30 years of silence, the monitors finally change. On February 17, 2025, Shekhar's neural activity spikes. He opens his eyes to a world that has moved on without him. When he meets his adult son, Ram, there is no shared history to fall back on. But the recognition is immediate. Shekhar sees in Ram the same quality of attention that the villagers had recognized in Edmund Hargrove 80 years before. Karen finally reveals why he's been so quiet. He presents a photograph of the checkpoint estate in the Northeast. He has spent 6 years legally securing the very property where the orchard once grew. Karen hadn't just bought a house. He'd found a way back to the start. The family wasn't moving away from the event that broke them. They drove directly toward it. By 2026, the 5 children returned to the hillside. They used their collective engineering and design backgrounds to transform the stone farmhouse into a high-tech resort, bringing the legacy of Nova Bridge to the ground that once took their father's life. During the build, they discover the roots of Catherine's orchard. They are massive, and they go deeper than the leveling equipment can reach. Instead of clearing them, the team decides to build the foundation directly over the top of them. They install their most advanced AR systems in the space above the old trees. The hardware performs at speeds that exceed every diagnostic benchmark, processing data with a fluidity that the engineers can't quite explain. At Checkpoint, the new world doesn't replace the old one, it simply sits on top of it. The resort is powered by the future, but it's held in place by roots that refuse to be dug up.